friends. Happy whatever day it is. Today I will be telling you all of the books that I read in January. I read more books this month than I think I ever have in a single month, which is really cool in my opinion. Where I live in the middle of the month of January, it snowed more than probably I've ever seen it snow before. And so there was a week where basically nothing was happening. My work wasn't the same. I didn't have to go into the office. I had nothing else to do. I couldn't even just go to the gym because the gym was closed. And so I spent a lot of time reading. And so that really upped my number for the month. So all that to say, I read 10 books in January and they were pretty good. I didn't branch out maybe a ton in terms of genre. I read books that I'd been meaning to read for a while, and so it felt pretty good. It really felt like I accomplished something. So without further ado, here are all the books that I read in January. So for Christmas, I got a Kindle, and so a lot of these books I do not have hard copy versions of. Instead, I will just hold this and you'll get the point. So the first book that I read was called Bound by Blood by Jessica M. Butler. This was a book that I found on Stuff Your Kindle Day at the end of last year. And it's fantasy, romance, they're really short reads. It's part of a series, but they're not really connected. And they're all by different authors. I'm currently reading another one in the series, Bound by Knighthood, but the first book I read this year was Bound by Blood. It was better than I was expecting. My thing with fantasy books is that I never really know the tone. Like, how serious are we? Like, is this like do or die? Are we going to war? Or is this like we have silly little powers also? So this was kind of somewhere in between. Like, it was a little sillier than I realized when I first started it, but it also had a lot of pretty like deep themes, I guess you could say. And so I liked it better than I was expecting to. I thought it would just kind of be like a wash, but I ended up giving it 3 stars. Like I said, it didn't completely blow me away. I wasn't just totally into the characters, but it was a cool world, and I hope that maybe the rest of the series helps me kind of appreciate it a little bit more. The next book I read is in my office, so I did not have it to show you, but I'll throw up a photo. The next book I read is Defined: Who God Says You Are by the Kendrick Brothers. They've made a couple of popular Christian movies in recent history. I am currently working on a girls' Bible study focused around our identity in Christ, and so I was reading a couple of different books to try to just get a direction for that, and this book was really good for that. It didn't necessarily like blow my mind, groundbreaking kind of stuff, but it was really well worded, it was really well organized. And the best part was the scripture references that they used were all really well compiled and used very intentionally. And so that really has helped me when creating like something that's a little more interactive. To have had a book like that that was so heavy in scripture, but was also really easily digestible. It was a little long. I think it could have been shorter and they could have still gotten the point across, but I feel like with books like that, authors really try to provide a lot of examples that don't really do anything for it necessarily. I did give it 5 stars. I have a feeling if I was reading it without that intention that I have, I probably would have given it 4, but Defined gets 5 stars for me this time. The next book I read was The Long Game by Elena Armas. I don't know how to say that author's name. I really should have looked it up. But The Long Game, so good. I enjoyed this book so much. So I've read some of this other author's works. The Spanish Love Deception, I read that earlier last year. Loved it. It took a little bit to get into, but I ended up really loving the character's dynamic. And at the end of last year, I read the follow-up to that, which is like their friends, The American Roommate Experiment. And I really expected to love that one, and I just didn't. It just did not hit where I wanted it to. And that kind of bummed me out. And so I was really nervous, honestly, to read this, but here's where it got me. It's about a soccer player, so obviously got a little bit of personal stake in it. I loved the setting. And the boy's name was Cameron, which is my husband's name, so that was kind of fun. but something about this book, the tropes just worked really well. It's kind of like an enemies to lovers moment. Maybe not as drawn out on the enemy side as I would like in a book, but it was still done really well. Their banter was really fun. I liked the way they butted heads, and so I loved this one. This might be my favorite by this author. It's definitely better than The American Roommate Experiment, but I would have to revisit Spanish Love Deception to say for sure. But I did give it 5 stars, so highly recommend. This is The American Roommate Experiment, if you're curious. The next book I read was The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This is part of that Dreamland Billionaires series that you may have heard of. Okay, so once I finished The Long Game, I was in a reading mood, and so I was like, I need another book to read. I asked a friend, should I read Twisted Love, which is part of another series that I feel like is similar energy, or The Fine Print, and she recommended The Fine Print, and I know that she did it from a good place, but I did not enjoy this book. I read it again on my Kindle, and I'm glad I did because I don't want to own a physical copy of this book. No offense to the author. It's clearly really popular, people eat it up, but I just could not, the dialogue, like I was repulsed by some of the things that they had to say. I've heard the second one, Terms and Conditions, is a little bit better, but I really need to cleanse my palate a little bit before I revisit that. So maybe in February, but honestly, maybe even further down the line, maybe we'll give it a try on the Kindle. But I just did not enjoy it. Again, it has those like enemies to lovers themes, but it is just like, I do not care. It moved too quickly and not in a fun way. Like the way that The Long Game quickly moved from enemies to lovers and the way that this one moved from enemies to lovers were not the same. I did not buy it, I guess, and the pacing was just not my favorite. It was really long, but not because they journeyed through that dynamic in a cool way. So I did give this 2 stars. I don't know if I've ever rated a book this low. Maybe I was just really feeling it because I knew that I was really on a reading kick this month, and I was like, I can say whatever I want. But yeah, I gave The Fine Print 2 stars. Don't really recommend. If you feel the pressure to read this series, don't. Like, unless you just want to hate read something or you're a better person than I am. The next book that I finished, I was kind of reading this one slowly throughout the month, but I finished it a little bit after this, was the book Atomic Habits. You've probably heard of it. I feel like it's really popular in the self-help businessy genre, and it was pretty good. It's in my office with other books of that nature, but obviously the beginning of the year is like a really good time to start habits and to discover that kind of stuff. The author, James Clear, did a really good job of really just kind of spelling out really good definitions of how habits work and why, and I really appreciated just the way he described habit stacking and kind of describing our motivations and what actually works with trying to get habits to stick and trying to get others to unstick. I gave this one 4 stars, and I think I stand by that. My only problem with it, and really a lot of books of this nature, is they always use like weight loss and health and wellness when describing these things, and maybe that's cool and maybe that works for you. Okay, sorry if things just changed. My camera died. So when things lump weight loss and health into things that you can really control to that degree, with like a little grit and whatnot, I'm always kind of turned off by that. And while maybe there's some truth in it, I think it kind of can be an unhealthy mindset if that's the only way we think about those things. But other than that, I really found a lot of his tips helpful. It is definitely not a this book changed my life kind of book, but it, for the time, I think really is helpful. I would probably recommend it to people to read, especially if you're looking for something to address that kind of thing. So 4 stars for Atomic Habits. Next, we have the crown jewel of January. And that's saying something because I read some pretty good books, but it is in fact the Cruel Prince series. I have heard about this book for a long time. I think it got really popular in like 2019. I don't know when it came out, something like that. And I've been meaning to read it. I've heard about it and I've seen it on TikTok, the whole shebang. I had just never gotten around to it. And so for Christmas this year, I asked for the whole series from my mother-in-law, and she came through. And when the snow hit, I finished Atomic Habits, I finished The Fine Print, and I was like, I need something that I'm gonna love. And I had high hopes for this series. This did not disappoint. The hype that I saw on the internet was so warranted. I don't want to give too much away because I feel like if I start talking about it, I'll say everything that happens. But I love the main character, Jude, probably one of the best written like female protagonists, especially in the young adult fantasy, dystopian, what, like all of that, I think she's in the top. She was never annoying to me. I was like, yeah, girl, that's exactly what I would do. Like, I would think the same thing. And so I was really on her team the whole time. And I feel like that's rare for books like this. I usually always get really annoyed with the female main character. The world building in this one is interesting. It's not super drawn out, but everything that you learn about it is pretty intentional, and I really appreciate that. I never felt like I was just being given pointless information. Like, really, any of the lore of this world came back around and mattered to the story. I don't want to give anything away, but I feel like I can say this. If you're like, this could potentially be a spoiler, maybe skip ahead a minute, but I have to say it. When I am looking for enemies to lovers, this is what I mean. Like, I need them to just hate each other, like all 3 books. And this is exactly what this is. After reading maybe 2 books that did that maybe a little too fast, and then of course not liking the fine print and immediately jumping into this, maybe that affected my ratings, but I gave every single one of these books 5 stars. The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing, all by Holly Black, all wonderful, wonderful books. If you are looking for like a series that I think is both bingeable but also good if you like read a little bit slower. I was blessed to be able to read this all at once. I'd like to think that if I had even moved through it slower, I would have been just as captivated and just as likely to want to keep picking it back up. So I cannot recommend this series enough. 5 stars all the way around. Beautiful fantasy, good action. I like the female main character and just enough romance, but it's definitely not the driving factor of this book. It's an underlying theme, but the politics of the world are definitely what's driving the plot. Super well done. I need to read some of her other stuff. That's definitely on my list. Hopefully this year we get around to that. The next book I read, I do not have with me because I let a friend immediately borrow it. If that tells you anything, I'm talking about Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is a really popular young adult title, and I was a little hesitant to read it. One, because I definitely think I'm getting to the point where reading like teen romance is like a little weird. Like, I'm old, but it was a really good teen romance, and so I'm really glad I picked it up. I had heard good things about it. Again, an enemies to lovers situation. I'm really sitting in that this season. This book is basically about a girl who really romanticizes love stories and romance and prom and all that stuff, and it's kind of her journey through that. A little bit of fake dating, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's really well done. I read it pretty fast, and then I immediately read Better Than the Prom, the really short, there's like a 30-page ebook online that you can get for free from the boy's point of view for part of the book, which was great. And so I really hope she has some other books that I haven't read yet. I don't know if they're dual POV, and either way, they're gonna be good. But I really hope that the sequel to this book that I believe is called Nothing Like the Movies, I really hope that one's dual point of view, because that ebook was really good. But I recommend this book a ton. If you're into any sort of romance at all, it is really super duper cute. I was really rooting for them. It's just really entertaining and fun and felt kind of real, after a little bit of fantasy. I think it was good to have a little bit of reality. So I gave Better Than the Movies 4 stars, extremely close to 5. I would probably call it like a 4.8. Like, it's right up there. Just a few things that I was like, I probably would have done that differently, but who am I to say, because I'm just a girl. Really, really love Better Than the Movies. And last, but certainly not least, my last completed read of the month of January is Check and Mate. So I purchased this book the same time that I purchased Better Than the Movies. I had a gift card. I have never read any other Ali Hazelwood titles, and I really don't know if I should have read other ones first, or if this was like it doesn't really matter. I know they're not connected, but sometimes, you don't want to read the best first because you don't want to get not like the other ones, but then also you don't want to read the worst first because you might not want to keep going. And so I like this book a lot. It's a tough follow for Better Than the Movies because I really like Better Than the Movies. But this book was still pretty good. The setting of just like the chess world was kind of neat. I think that was fun. I know that Ali Hazelwood, a lot of her books are set kind of in that academic setting, different science professions or just anything like that, any sort of STEM overlay. She's pretty good at that from what I can tell, and so I think I would like it. But this one was really fun. Again, I guess you could say this is an enemies to lovers Wow, Allie has a favorite trope this time of year apparently. I kind of felt like I was missing something the whole time, and not in like a we're waiting for a reveal kind of way, but in like I'm struggling to see the motivation here, and it didn't really like come around. Like there was an explanation for most things, but it sort of was like I think we could have handled things differently if we would have just kind of come to terms with that a little bit faster. But it was really cute. Like I read it in like a day, and so any criticism that you hear me saying is not that big of a deal because I clearly read the whole book and I gave it 4 stars. It's a very different 4 stars than the one I gave Better Than the Movies. This is probably more like a 4.2, maybe even just a straight up 4, maybe even a 3.8. I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Not as good, but still really cute, and I think it's worth a read because the setting is so fascinating, and that kind of makes the romance that much more interesting just because they're in a really unique situation. So I probably will read more of Allie Hazelwood's books in the future. I don't know if I will purchase them or if I'll try to do like a cheaper version on my Kindle, just because I'm not like super attached at this point, but maybe I'll change my mind. So that is all 10 books that I read in January, 11 if you count that little ebook Better Than the Prom, but I'm not gonna do that even though my Goodreads app does. 10 books is pretty cool. I'm really excited. I have a goal to read 50 books this year, and so we are moving and grooving. I think if I had to pick a favorite, that's really tough. The Cruel Prince series is definitely at the top of my list, and I think, I don't know, The Long Game and Better Than the Movies were both great. It's really tough, but I think Better Than the Movies might have it because I really want a sequel. Like The Long Game I feel pretty good about, but Better Than the Movies, I'm like excited to know that there's another one coming out. So, and I guess there technically is a sequel to The Long Game, but it's in that same world, I guess. I think that comes out later this year. And I hope I'm not just making that up. I very well could be, so please check my sources. But I have loved reading. I think this time of year, it's been really nice to have that to kind of relax and to ease my mind a little bit. I've been trying to be really conscious to not escape into books, but rather like relax into books and like really calm myself and let myself dream and imagine in them rather than feel like, oh, I don't want to face things or think about things, so I'll jump in a book. And I think I've done okay with that. It can be really easy when life is stressful to do that and to just use a book or anything as an escape. And I'm just thankful that we have things like this to get us excited and to have hobbies and things that kind of drive creativity. I kind of feel that moving into this next month a little bit. I'm really hopeful that this habit of reading that I've hopefully cemented into my life right now makes me a better person and not just because I feel cool that I read a lot of books, but because they're fun to talk about. I feel like they help us understand the human experience more, even if you're reading about fairies. I don't know, like maybe that's a stretch. But I would love to hear if you have any book recommendations. I'm currently reading like 4 books at once, and a lot of them are kind of more like nonfiction topical. Like I'm reading another book on identity right now, I'm reading a leadership book, I'm reading a book on grief. So like that's kind of a lot, but I have already started another Bound By book on my Kindle, and so that's fun and short, and so I should fly through that. But if you have any other recommendations moving forward, I would love to hear them. I would also love to know if you have like a go-to ranking system when it comes to books. I feel like just giving stars on Goodreads doesn't fully showcase what I mean. I'm trying to get into writing more reviews, but sometimes I just feel like I don't have the words to express what I really mean, and I kind of want to move on. And so I'm working on that as well. Clearly, this is a form of that, but I enjoy writing, and so I feel like I would like to write reviews. So we're gonna work on that. But if you have a system for how you rank and review books, I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to get to reading, and truly, really all these books but the fine print I recommend. But if that's your jam, that's your jam. Whatever it is, I hope you find something that you love to read or something that you love to do in your free time and create that space for that. So again, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, February, month, whatever it is for you. Have a wonderful one. Bye.